Well, good evening, everyone. I'm Frank Fear. This is Mountaineer Locker Room Then and Now, and there's my partner, Mickey Plumley, right next to me. Greg is not here tonight, but for a good reason, Mickey, right?
A very good reason. He's down there coaching his son, coaching, right?
That's right. He's in Radford, Virginia. His son, Sid, is an assistant coach for Winthrop University, and they're on the road tonight, not too far from his place in Radford. And so there was a family reunion. And so he chose his son over us. Can you believe that? It's amazing.
It's hard to believe. It's hard
I
to
mean, he,
believe,
he
Frank.
treats us like family, especially when he asks for money. But when it comes to, no, actually, we encouraged him to not feel guilty about that at all. It's a big deal. You know, many of you know Greg was a longtime high school coach and actually coached Sid and other sons too. And now he has a chance to really see his son. They're doing very well. They're in first place in the Big South. They're a favorite tonight, and I wouldn't be a bit surprised we're going to see Winthrop in the big dance in March. So Greg's not with us tonight. He'll be with us next week, and we're pleased tonight to have as our guest Mike Fox, who's going to be with us just in a second. We're going to talk about football, WVU football, obviously, and we're also going to talk about Mike's great ideas in terms of, I would say, revitalizing or making the nil and the financial allocations to players more relevant and responsible. We'll get to that in a minute, but a couple of things first. Mick wanted to bring up just a few words about WVU basketball, and then a word or two about, believe it or not, WVU baseball. The women are playing tonight at 9 o'clock on ESPN Plus. They are a half game out of first place in the Big 12. Had a big win at home the other day against Baylor. We were talking about that with you and Craig and I the other day. A great win against Baylor. They're playing Colorado tonight. So if you have a chance at 9 o'clock and you have access to ESPN Plus, you can always follow it on the ESPN app. That's a really good team, a very exciting team. And then the men tomorrow night on ESPN2, I believe, are going to be playing Cincinnati. Tough game. They had a rough outing against, I shouldn't laugh, against Baylor. I'll tell you, Mick, the ball simply would not drop for those guys.
I'll tell you, just really an off night shooting for him. I think it was 27%. And, the big guy there goes 1 for 15 on his 3-point attempts on Honor Huff. And just an really bad night shooting for the guys, which I think led to their demise. But even with that, Frank, I think 2.5 minutes ago, they were within, they cut it to 5 and had a little run going there. And then Baylor kind of ran away with it there at the end and had that slam dunk to finish it off for a 10-point win. So one of those, you got to win the ones at home to remain competitive in the Big 12. So, but I'm looking forward to good things tomorrow night. They beat Cincinnati the first time around. And let's hope they can make it a season sweep tomorrow night up in Cincinnati.
Yeah, that's tough. The last couple of games against Cincinnati. I remember the game last year when they were down, I think, 10 points, Cincinnati, and then I think hit 3 consecutive threes within no time flat. And if they had made the fourth one, if I remember correctly, Cincinnati would have won that game, which would have been a miracle. Well, the Cincinnati game is important, no question about that, because WVU is on the bubble here. You never know what's going to happen in the Big 12 tournament, but they have a huge game Sunday, national TV at 1 o'clock against Texas Tech. And so, let's keep our fingers crossed. It'd be great if they beat the Bearcats tomorrow night on the road and then come back. They've got a center, Texas Tech center, Toppin, who is unbelievable. He's a pro. No question he's an NBA or a future NBA. Or he could be playing in the NBA now. But that'll be a great game. That will be a appetizer for the Super Bowl. So, and last thing before we get into WVU football is that, believe it or not, baseball is around the corner. On February, I've got this written down. I want to get the date. February 13th, Friday the 13th, which is Friday after next, WVU opens the season at Georgia Southern at Statesboro, 3-game series there. And this is this is the crazy thing, Mickey, is that the opener, the home opener for the Mountaineers, is against Canisius College of Buffalo, New York, on February 24th. Now, what are the what are the odds? Do you think that game's even going to be played?
Not very good. Not very good. You know, they usually take that trip down south to get the season kicked off when I lived in Atlanta. It was 3 years ago. I got to see them right at the beginning of the season. They came down, and typically they'll get a few games in with Georgia Southern, and then Georgia State, and even try to get a game or two with Georgia Tech in while they're down there. I'm not sure what the schedule calls for this year, but even in the South, playing this early in the season, you know, it's like Major League Baseball starting in Chicago in the last week of March. Not where you want to be.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, they have a really good team, great recruiting here. Uh, and I looked at the schedule. I think Liberty's next, but I didn't look at it that closely. What I did look at is who they're playing out of conference, and it's clearly doable. In fact, I've got it written down here. Let me out of conference, Maryland, obviously out of the Big Ten, and two rivals we play every year, Penn State and Pitt, and then of course Marshall, our third rival on that. Well, Maryland obviously is a rival too, so they're all rival games, but they're not beyond that. It's pretty much a warm up against what we call a group of five teams. And then the Big 12 is always tough, obviously. And then these midweek games against Maryland, Penn State, Pitt, home and home, Marshall. I think we may play Marshall three times. I'm not sure. But those will be home and home if they play two. So I think it's exciting. And as I've talked about on the show, it's one of the reasons I have ESPN Plus. Not a plug for ESPN Plus, but I watch Mountaineer baseball much more than Major League Baseball. It's incredibly exciting. Tony Caridi's son does a great job broadcasting the home games on ESPN Plus, and so it's going to be exciting.
Certainly will be. I tell you, last year I really enjoyed watching them play in the regional and the super regional. Never forget that LSU game last year
Oh
where
man,
they almost came back from that. I think it was 9 or 10 run deficit. They almost came back and took it, but they're a very exciting team to watch, and I think we are looking for bigger and better things this year than we had last.
yeah, I'm glad you brought up that LSU series, and then going on the road at Clemson. The ACC obviously takes baseball very seriously and beats Clemson at Clemson in a series to get to LSU. Yeah,
Yep.
exciting stuff. So, but the other thing, and you and I and Greg talked about this over the phone. Um, what's the best way to frame this about WVU football? It's been tough, obviously, since Coach Brown left, because you knew, based on experience, not just at WVU, that when there's a transition like this, particularly when a coach is brought in as late as Coach Rodriguez was, when recruiting had already clearly been in gear for other clubs, it was going to be a work in progress, and so uh, you knew there'd be a whole cast of characters. And then it was pretty clear to us that the group that was brought in last year, not a lot of them would continue into year two, and that has happened. And so what we have, that's my son. We'll turn that off. What we have now, though, is the beginning, really, for the first time since what would that be, the 24, December 24, where we're beginning to see some stability. WVU had a great recruiting season for the freshmen, and also a great portal recruiting season. And you know, Mick, I was looking at this the other day. Tonight should be, or would have been, our busiest night in terms of reviewing the roster, because in the old days, was just a few years ago, the first Wednesday of February
February.
was the signing day.
Yep.
And it's a nothing burger now because your comments here, you got to get those kids in the December signing. You can't wait until the February signing. So it pales in comparison.
Well, and the good news, I think, there, Frank, is Rich Rod was able to get a much earlier start this year than he was last year. And one of the points that I made a couple of shows ago that I think the average viewer or the average fan may not have an appreciation for is how important it is to get these kids in, particularly the early signers out of high school and the transfer portal transferees, to get them in for the winter workout program, to get them in for the winter weightlifting program. And weren't able to do that last year, which I think disrupts the continuity. I'm sure Mike can speak to this some when he gets on there too, but those winter programs are extremely important to building not only strength and durability and flexibility, but it brings the team together before you get to spring practice. And of course, last year, a lot of the kids that we signed in the transfer portal didn't even show up until a couple weeks before the season started in August. So at least we're over that hurdle this year.
Yeah,
I think about 95% of the transfer portal guys are already there. I've been following social media on who's winning the weekly lifting warrior championship, and some good stuff going on right now behind the scenes.
yeah. What you're saying, of course, you've been through it, experience, and know how important those winter conditioning sessions are. And then what it does, I think, even though it's not called the spring game anymore, leading into the spring practice and the spring celebration, that last public event is really, really important. What we might do now, Nick, and we can bring in Mike with us too. Darren, if you could put up graphic number one, which is the roster numbers, and let's talk about this. This is fascinating, actually, when we look at because we've got holdovers from last year. I shouldn't say holdovers, but guys who still have eligibility from last year. We've got the those who left and left to go into the portal. We've got the early uh, signees for coming out of high school, and then we've got the portal guys. And you see, we lost Darren here. I don't know if he's going to be able to get that up. But when you see it, you will see that we're still faced with the same issue that we had last year, and that is we still have many more guys in the fold than the NCAA allows in terms of scholarship. We're at about 118 right now, and that doesn't include any of the guys that went into the portal who aren't signed by others.
Right.
That just includes the guys that have remaining eligibility. And let me see, Darren, were you able to get that first one up? He's trying to get it up. There it is. Nope, the first one, number one.
Yeah, on that 118 figure, Frank, the cap is, according to NCAA regulations, you can only have 105.
Yeah,
So they'll still have
yeah.
some cutting down to do.
There it is,
There we
right
go.
there. And let's bring Mike in on this too. One of the things that's interesting, and we haven't talked about it a lot, Mike, is how many players still have eligibility who didn't go into the portal. Um, and so you can read the numbers there. Um, but so we've got a number of people who, I looked at the two deep today, Mike and Mick, and I didn't, again, it's very early. And I didn't see many names in the proposed or at least speculated too deep players who were there last year. It's mostly the guys coming in on the portal, and but at the same time, it includes some players that are expected to play as a freshman. So, Mike, what's your make in terms of really putting Humpty Dumpty back on the wall?
I mean, going back to your conversation earlier, the good news is they got as many guys there in the winter program because you really do build your teams in the off season, and that's the beginning part of the season. Trying to build them in the summertime, that's a pretty difficult task. So usually build them in the winter, and then you go into a spring game and the spring ball type of situation, and then you can move about. Um, they've obviously got a lot of guys, and that's cool because you need a lot of bodies right now. But we got to get bodies that need to be able to be trained and elevated, and you know, they're winning in that department right now, but that's an easy department to kind of win right this second in time because we needed to. So I'm imagining they're doing what they need to do, get the bodies that can do something, and definitely got a lot of guys. So
Yeah. Well, and the other thing, Mick, you and I and Greg have talked about this forever. The numbers this year are good in terms of the quality of these players. Uh, at the end of the day, the Mountaineers were just outside of the top 20, both in terms of the ratings of the players brought in the early signing period in December from high school, and also just outside of the top 20 in terms of the portal gets. So to be, in a lot of schools, think back to Colorado a couple of years ago, when Coach Prime was hitting the portal hard, but not high school at all, really, not at all. But for West Virginia to be basically to be 21st, I think, in both. We'll look at the numbers here in a second, both in the high school recruiting and portal gets when you're competing against a lot of other teams. So, Darren, if you could bring up slide number 2, that'll give us a chance to look at these are the recruiting that came in terms of the early season. And, we talked about it, Mike. Nobody's going to be able to compete against Texas Tech because of the money. So they're number one
well, I
in the
mean
Big Ten. Yeah, go ahead.
I hear you, but that will ultimately become a problem. But that's one that I guess we can't do nothing about right now. So
Yeah, yeah. But West Virginia had the most recruits in the country the last time we looked with 49. I think it's
oh no, it's
48 now.
it's
Yeah,
impressive. It's
it
impressive.
is.
Nothing. There's no. We got to take every impressive inch that we can get
Yeah,
and keep moving forward with it because that's how we got to build this situation. Then that's how we build this team. So
yeah,
that's how.
yeah.
Those
The,
are
the
our
thing
options.
that's right. Well, and the other thing that I think is interesting, Mick, when you look at those teams there, Tech, BYU, Arizona State, Utah, those are have been the top teams in the Big 12, and we'll look later at what's projected for this year. But Texas Tech's on that list, BYU's on that list, Utah's on that list. So you hope when you're basically building for the future with the guys you're bringing in. That's obvious. Sometimes it doesn't work, but it really positions WVU in a very, very good situation.
Certainly does. I mean, this is probably the first time that I've seen West Virginia on that list with those other teams, isn't it, Frank?
Yeah, I mean,
First time they've shown up there amongst the top contenders. So, I mean, and weren't we
yeah,
second in the Big 12 in terms of rankings
go back, if you
on
can
the
go back to the
gets?
slide. Yeah, let's go back to the slide,
I think it was
Darren, number
second behind
2.
Texas Tech, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yep,
Yeah,
yep,
number
yep, we
two.
were. Yep,
21st
and 20,
nationally, second in the
yeah,
Big 12.
that is that's very positive, and you got to give it to Coach Rodriguez and the staff. And in terms of some of the guys we should be looking for, if you could put up the third visual there, hopefully these names are going to become household names. Well, Mick, everybody's talking about Mike. Everybody's talking about Kevin Brown, who flipped
Yep.
from Penn State to West Virginia. But what's neat about that is those. I'll just say one thing and then turn to you guys for your thoughts. These guys all fit needs. You got an offensive lineman, you've got a tackle, you've got a safety, you've got a guy that looks to be the first, probably number 2 running back, Latimer, and then you have Henson, a defensive lineman, and then you have a wide receiver. And these are all guys that are rating just, no one's below 89 point, whatever that, I can't see that number there. But the point is they're just about 90 or above, which, the scale goes to 100. But your thoughts, Mick, and then Mike, about any of these guys, or generally your feeling about the quality of these recruits?
Well, I'm pleased personally to see the two fellows that we got out of the SEC. Because when you're starting to get players from the Southeastern Conference, you're talking real speed. I mean, some real speed. So, looking forward to that. And got to be quick out there. In addition to the size, Kevin Brown, I think, is going to be just really, really impressive player. It was great to see that in that weight weightlifting warrior contest in week 1, he won it as a freshman. So,
Wow.
I mean, he's coming to play, no question about that.
Yeah, it's amazing. I tell you, both of you guys, former linemen, Mike, that must warm your heart.
You got to have big guys that could move and make some action in the trenches, or nothing's gonna happen anywhere. So, I mean, it's just that simple. So,
No, it's true. I mean, the best example is Indiana. When you look at that offensive line, we've talked about that on the show.
yeah.
Everybody talked about the quarterback, but the quarterback's not going to do
Well,
what he did without that line.
well, I mean, not to get ahead of us, but I mean, there's a heck of a blueprint to look after. You know what I'm saying? So for them to be able to pull Indiana out of wherever they pulled them out of and then put them on the field like that, I mean, that coaching staff did an outstanding job. So I mean, there's no sense in trying to reduplicate anything, because we live in a copycat league, and we always have lived in a copycat league. So I mean, there's some things from there that we should probably take and try to utilize. As far as, I don't know what all their budgets was over there, but I don't know any of the other parts of it. But they definitely had a heck of a team, and they had a heck of a coaching staff. So
there's a number of things. Here's a factoid that I didn't realize, and I was sort of shocked when I looked at it. I looked at the year before Cignetti got there, and Tom Allen was the coach. He was the coach for a number of years, and they had a bad season, I think 3-9, but they started to get much better toward the end of the season. They lost 3 of their last 4. They beat Wisconsin, but the 3 games they lost total of 10 points, so average of 3 points a game. And they did it because they had one reason is they had a hell of a quarterback. And I looked, their quarterback was Brendan Sorsby. Well, Sorsby left when Cignetti came in. He goes to Cincinnati, turned Cincinnati, one of the big reasons Cincinnati got turned around. And now he got one of the biggest nil contracts. He's going to be the starting quarterback for Texas Tech this year. And so, a number of things lined up, I think, for IU. Cignetti was a big part of it, bringing all those players from James Madison. But the fact of the matter is, I think, like happens so often, you can see the beginning, maybe a little bit before most people say, well, it happened, as soon as Cignetti got there. But when you look at the last couple of games the year before, not bad. Let's take a look at the portal. Go to the next one, number 4 there. And here's the offense. And you can see we brought in 34 guys into the portal. 44 left. And so if you look at the offense there, that's very interesting. And I'll turn to Mick on this. It's going to be really interesting. I was looking at some beat writers' comments today. This Michael Hawkins, you talked about the SEC, the transfer from Oklahoma. We all love Scotty Fox. But boy, I wouldn't bet against Michael Hawkins when the smoke clears being the starting quarterback next year.
Very well. I think they clocked him in the 40 at 4.2 or 4.3.
Wow.
Which is extremely fast. So he's going to bring not only the passing threat, but the running threat as well. And, having played against SEC competition, he'll come prepared, ready to play as well. So some real impressive gets there in the portal. The one question Yeah, before we leave this point, Frank, I'm just curious. The kids that we had that went into the portal, like Nico Markel, for example, that nobody picked up. Isn't there like 33 of those guys still out there that nobody picked up? Is that the number somewhere in
Yeah,
the
it's
30s? And
yeah at the bottom of the chart. I think I didn't look today. It was yesterday. There were 22. 22 Mountaineers
22. Okay.
went into the portal and haven't been picked up. And
Okay.
I think 9 have been picked up by Power 4 schools. And so half of the players that went into the portal, in some cases months ago, are still looking for a team to hook up with. And this goes, I'm glad you brought it up because it goes back to the point we talked about last week that I think bears to be brought up again this week. There's not going to be a lot of room, just to speak of the players who didn't go into the portal in terms of those players in the portal who may seek, can they come back? That's going to have to be worked out. Another offensive player that is going to see a lot of playing time, who I think was the leading rusher in the country, is that running back Cam Cook from Jackson State. And the other thing I think, Mike, is really important, this Caden Luke from Arizona is a true fullback. And you saw it toward the end of the season last year. West Virginia was using big men in goal line situations. And I think we're going to see a lot of Caden Luke in that particular situation where we get close to the goal line and need a big body. Go ahead.
Nothing like getting a big body to help hammer it in there. So
yeah, and go ahead.
And if he's obviously going to be talented enough to do the other things too. Hopefully he can catch the ball and run the ball as well. So.
And they got good linemen there too. I mean, if we can go back to that chart again, Darren, already, I don't know if you've been reading about him, Mick, or not, but this Devin Vass, the transfer on the O-line from K-State, and also this Karsten Cassidy, as well as Cameron Griffin from Jack State, that offensive line looks to be a lot stronger than it was. Also getting a lot of you got DJ Epps, got a lot of press at Troy. Tayron Francis, another SEC guy, which I'm glad you brought that up because we haven't seen a lot of that. Getting guys out of the South, getting guys that either were at or otherwise would be at an SEC school. And so if you look at this offense now, what's interesting is, if you look at 34 at the top, only 14 on the offensive side. So obviously they were very selective, and they should be on the offensive side. But they 6 more players, and we'll look at that in a second on the defensive side. But any final thoughts, guys, about what you're seeing in that chart?
I mean, for the most part, I mean that's a good start. Just every program needs to be able to receive a player and then elevate that player to a higher playing status. So hopefully these guys can rise to the occasion, and that our coaches that are there can help, raise their play, because that's what it's all about. So that's, you got to have the ingredients to bake the cake, right? So.
That's right.
That's a great point, Mike. Back to your earlier point about Cignetti's success at Indiana. Cignetti did that. He didn't have a single 4 or 5-star athlete on that team.
So it can be done.
3 stars were the best, and that's the same approach that I know Rich Rob likes to take, where you get the 3-star player in and you coach him up. You do a developmental coaching job. So instead of just you bring in who you can from the portal to give you immediate impact, but for the long-term success, if we can get these kids to stay once they get them coached up, I think it's a much better approach for the whole program. You get a kid for 2-3 years maybe instead of just 1 year in and out.
Yeah, no, and just to reinforce that, when I looked at it, we don't have a chart on this, but last year when we looked at the players that they brought in, you saw a lot of guys in their last year. They had 1 year of eligibility, and you would expect that given the circumstances. Not this year. You got yet a number of people have 1 year left, but you got a ton of folks who have more than 1 year of eligibility, which that enables that coaching up. Darren, if we could bring in the defense, you're going to see, I think, the same pattern on the defense. A lot of really good guys here, and also very competitive nationally, and also very competitive with the Big 12. And so, you look at that D line. Now, it's interesting. You've got 20 players here, and look at that: 5 on the defense on the D line, 4 linebackers, and 8 D backs. Well,
defensive backs.
Yeah, come on. You know this. That's been a weakness, an issue, a concern. This Kamari Wilson from Memphis is getting stellar reviews. Jameer Latimer, his brother's on the team. He came from Wisconsin. Jameer did. He's a cornerback. Hawkins is getting really good reviews, as is Padrell. So when you look at this defense, Ofogo, I hope I pronounced that right, from Bowling Green had big numbers. Same with Durham Campbell at Coastal. Toby Hastrop is highly thought of. I don't want to point out certain players and not others, but Mike, again, is someone who understands the importance of that forward wall with a strong D line and linebackers who can both handle the run and also in mid-range handle the pass. Plus, one of the things that the staff did this year was really go after edge guys. And that's really important. Those edge guys are so critical. We saw time and time last year, the quarterbacks just had too much time to throw.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a throw league. We live in a pass-happy league, and you better have some D-backs that can play some real man and keep the ball away from them catching it. So
yeah,
it's pretty simple, but you got to have guys that can do it. So,
yeah.
But you have to have guys that can teach it too. So I'm not saying we don't, but we got to be able to teach it. We got to elevate the players with the coaching staff, and because just because they're a 4 or 5 or 3-star or whatever star they want to be, they got to keep going. This is just the beginning part of their life.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
There's a lot of competition out there. So
that's right.
Everybody's sitting back in their castles figuring out how they're going to, execute next season. They looked at what Signetti did and be like, wow, there's a blueprint to go look at. So I mean that's a lot. I was pulling for him. That's a big deal. So
yeah,
it can be done. So
Amen. Mick, your thoughts?
Well, just the one other player on there we picked up on special teams, that Nataro kid from Alabama, the punter. I think that's going to be a great addition for us as well.
Yeah, I mean, that was a surprise that you and I've talked about that with Greg. They had to remake really those special teams. And again, I'm as a former administrator, manager, you're looking at it may be football, but you're looking at the mindset, what they're doing as they put the pieces on the chessboard. And one of the things that we know we have to improve on is that we've got to put on kickoffs, we've got to put that ball into the end zone. Too many times we didn't do that. And it got better toward the end of the season, but that player left. And so they recruited specifically, and I'm trying to remember his name now. It's on the list, but I'm not going to be able to remember.
Yeah, I mean, the bottom line, absolutely. Special teams is 1/3 of your output. So most of those games are determined by field position and 3 points or less if it's a good game. So you obviously, want to, keep them as far back as you can, and you obviously want to be able to make your field goals and extra points, because if you don't, you run a high chance of losing a close game,
that's right,
big time. So
no, you're absolutely correct. Well, let's look at some of the players. Put up the next one, Darren. As we did, we looked at some of the highest rated kids coming out of high school, and here are some of the top 3 rated guys coming out of the portal. And Cam Cook, we already talked about him, the running back from Jackson State. Mentioned Devin Dass, the offensive guard. He's to the upper right, Kansas State. And I mentioned Kamari Wilson, too. And again, if you think about it, those are three positions. Last year it was painful. The question was, well, who's going to be the running back this week after Jaheim White got hurt? They've got really good running backs. They had good running backs, but we were injured a lot last year. But those are only three of the guys. But again, impressive.
Good running backs, they're only good when you have a good offensive line. So it doesn't, right. For the most part, if they can't make a hole, the guy, I don't care how good he is, he's not going anywhere fast. And more than likely, some of those people got hurt because we couldn't make holes and knock people off the ball the way we needed to. So It goes both ways, but, not giving anybody any excuses or nothing, but it's, running backs need holes if you're going to let them run the ball.
Well, and it's Mick, your thoughts with Coach Trickett coming from Jack State. Guys like Devin Dass they're going to be coached up, no question.
No doubt about it. I think it's a major improvement, and I think I mentioned a couple of shows ago, I think getting Coach Trickett in there coaching the offensive line is going to be worth at least one additional win for the program. He is really an excellent.
Probably more than that, but I hope so.
Yeah.
We'll, it's amazing.
Let him work his magic with those guys.
Yeah, we had him on about 6 months ago, and it was very interesting. He doesn't do a lot of interviews, but you could see how the mind works, and he's been at it for a long time. So, a quick one we'll look at, Darren. The next one. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Mike.
I tell you what, offensive line coaches, good ones, like Trickett's a very good coach. So I expect him to, cover every detail because every square inch or every movement to the left or to the right that an offensive lineman makes, whether it's a run or it's a pass, every quarter inch matters. And that's how detailed you got to coach that position. Because when they snap the ball, man, everything gets crazy out there. But if their feet are in position and their hands are in position and everything is in position, they'll have success. And if they got somebody like him coaching, maybe they're going to push them over the edge. So that's a good thing. So, but every movement matters. I mean, the same goes on defense, but we're just talking about offense right now. But it's a quarter of an inch at a time, really. So if you go one way or the other, you can be way out of alignment. So running backs only need 6 inches. They're through the roof.
That's right. Absolutely. Just if we quickly could put up the next one, we won't go into great detail, but one of the things that we've been really thirsting for is depth. And we thank Keenan for this. And this is a preview of the linebacker room. If you go on WV Sports, and you look at January 28th, Keenan's, who's been on the show a couple times, his article is there. Certainly we had some key losses. Those names are important. Obviously, Reed Carrico came from Ohio State. Chase Wilson came in, I think, from Colorado State, if I remember correctly. Ben Bogle, unfortunately, we lost him to the portal. But, we got two guys coming back, Cutter and Woods. And then you can see between the high school and portal, we brought 11 linebackers in. Now, how that's all going to shake out, what I'm reading already is that obviously the early line is to the portal gets, and Tyler Stolsky's name comes up in a Fogho too, as well as Harper Holloman and as a bandit, along with David. But we're beginning to see some depth here. So you got 13 guys who are going to be at least 13 guys in that linebacker room, because those key returnees don't include all the returnees. But Mickey, that gives me hope.
Plus, the ones that are borderline, they can potentially participate in special teams. You know what I'm saying? The other third that needs to, get over the hump. Just saying. They got
Mickey,
they got
yep,
a different athletic ability to do some of that.
yep. Mickey, your thoughts?
Well, a lot of change there at the linebacking position, no doubt about it. It's going to, I think, a large part of our success on defense. I feel more comfortable with the changes that we've made in the defensive secondary than I am with the risk that we're facing in some untested, untried linebackers at the LB position. So I think that's going to be a real question mark to our defensive success this year, probably more so than the defensive secondary or the defensive line. But
Yeah,
hopefully those guys will step right in and get coached up and do their jobs.
yep.
Well, I
Just do
think
your
Chris.
job. That's what they say, right, Mike?
Yep, I'm pretty sure Chris Herring is still there, right?
I think so.
Yeah, so I would count on him, helping them make sure they did their job. I think they'll be okay while he's there. So he was the linebacker when I played, so he knows how to do linebacker.
Great, super.
All right.
Well, one last thing before we turn, and we wanted to do this in a 30-30, split the show. We're just about there in terms of time. Is how does this all look in terms of the schedule? And so, if you could put the last visual up there in terms of what people are saying. Now, these are early predictions, and what they're saying for the most part, and this comes from a USA Today article, is that Texas Tech, BYU, Utah, and Houston are considered to be the front runners. Arizona State's not there, surprisingly. Kansas State had trouble at the end of the season. They're not there either. But you got Texas Tech, BYU, Utah, and Houston. And the interesting thing about this, and we talked about this earlier this week with Mickey and Greg, if you look at our schedule, while we don't play BYU, I mean, they got a ton of people coming back. Birchmeyer at quarterback. They got the running back coming back. They had success in the portal, but we don't play BYU. We play Texas Tech, we play Utah, and we play Houston. But what's interesting about this, Mick, and we talked about this, as I said the other day, they all come late. These are late games. They're all November games, 2 on the road, 1 at home, which means that, again, trying to predict the future, you know what it's like, it's tough. But the point is that it'd be much more difficult if these were early season games. You have a chance to get a running start. Not that the other teams can be taken lightly, because they can't. But I think there's something to be said about the teams that are considered the front runners. You don't have to face until later. Now the downside is you're playing in a cluster situation at the end of the season. But I don't know, when you played, would you rather have it that way or play these tougher teams early?
Well, a lot depends on the schedule, like you're just pointing out, and if you got the big fight at the end, then it gives you hopefully enough time to get better to get there, because that's a heck of a gauntlet, one way or the other, any way you want to cut it. So, I mean, from a TV perspective, obviously, it's at the end of the year where people, things are getting narrowed down, and it, creates even more excitement and so on and so forth, which creates more viewers. But, you definitely want to be able to, be ready for the challenge. And, if that's where they're at the end, then, you got a beginning that you got to have a strong beginning too. If, your first couple games aren't put together well, especially good games against competitive opponents, then you'll know what you'll have to do. But being this year, it seems like we have a lot more time with our players, with an off season that's going on, and a lot of extra Jimmys and Joes there to fulfill the football program in a better way. So, I mean, take them in the end. If that's where they're at, that's where you got to take them. Can't rearrange the schedule today.
That's right.
But
Mickey, your thoughts?
but in the old days, if they were the first one on your schedule, and that's happened before too, and at least in the old days, when they used to do those kickoff classics, and you'd have to open up with Oklahoma or something like that. Remember those days? Then that you better get an edge on early in the winter, and then the spring game or spring practice.
Yep.
That's how I see it.
Mick?
Yeah, I agree with Mike. Two thoughts on this. Number one, I think the makeup of your schedule has a big impact on the team morale. If you get off to a relatively easier start, I mean, we're playing UT. Was it UT Chattanooga,
Coastal Carolina,
UT Martin, and although Coastal Carolina always been competitive. And then we got that have a real test with Virginia coming up in the third game of the year down in Charlotte. But if you're asking me for my druthers, I'd rather have it this way. If you are going to be in a heavyweight championship bout, I want to have several preliminary bouts against the lesser known, less qualified contenders before I work my way up to taking on that heavyweight for the heavyweight championship. So I like the schedule the way it's laid out this year.
Yeah, because we're still
development. Yeah, with 49 kids coming in from high school. Yeah. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I mean, we're still in the developmental stage. I mean, for real. So it's like, take every advantage point you can get, just like what you're saying, and that the schedule is the schedule. So I'm with you on all that, and definitely build up to it. But I mean, you got to build up to it, and you got to win games. So I mean, that's the other part. So.
Yeah. The other thing is that we're going to have some teams that have been high flying, but they've lost their coaches. A new coach at Kansas State, new coach at Iowa State, new coach at Utah. I mean, these are all new coaches, and it's you have no control except on your schedule, except the quote unquote preseason games, so to speak, or the pre-league games. But the way that the league lays it out, we have more. I think this is a year that we have 5 home games, 4 games on the road. So you don't have any control over that because that alternates. The bottom line is, I agree with both of you guys. This is a very, first of all, you have to play the teams that are on your schedule, period. But I think this is a schedule, given where WVU is at, that I think is good. This is a good schedule for WVU. And you're right, Mick, don't ever take Coastal Carolina. Like Georgia Southern, don't take teams like that. I mean, they've beaten some big teams. Look at what happened with us at Ohio. But at the same time, we're playing Coastal Carolina at home. It's early in the season, playing UT Martin at home. Virginia, as you're right, is going to be a tough go because they found their sea legs in football after a number of years. But thanks, guys, for helping us go through that, because I think what it does, I was really excited to look at this because we couldn't have done this last year. It just was not possible to do what we did tonight because of the fluid nature. It's still fluid, but you can see the experienced hand that Rodriguez is taking to shaping this group. And as Cliff Hill said a couple weeks ago, who does a great job helping high school players find out where their best fit is with a nil to boot. He said, the second year is going to be an improvement. He predicts. He said the third year he thinks is going to be the thing to really look at. And so I think what Mike said, it's probably hyperbolic to say, well, let's look at the IU pattern platform and then replicate it. But without going off the rails and talk about WVU as national champion in 3 years, there are some similarities in terms of how IU was built and what Rodriguez is doing. So that's a good thing.
The good news is it can be done, and it just has to be done in the way that we can do it. So.
That's right. No, that's right. Hopeful is the word. Mike, you've been doing an awful lot of thinking about how we can improve this financial system. And so the platform is yours now. And we talked about the possibility of this being the first of a couple shows we'll do, perhaps with some partners the next time you come on. But lay out your thoughts, and then we'll be your foils. Mickey and I will be your foils, and we'll respond to your ideas. So go at it.
Well, I just think, like, from an overall perspective, it with all the things being almost equal, it comes down to some version of money and benefits. So I know we got an NIL, and I know that our NIL was, at least at the time, was about 693,000. Was the overall benefit, allegedly, and so that's like 21,000 times 33 players from the last time we talked about it. And then you got, like, your the Texas Tech, they're like, they're like 112,000 times 33. That's like $3.7 million. I know we're not there, but how do we get close, or how do we get to a point where it might make sense for somebody else to want to come to our school? You know, we need to come up with some version of a NIL retirement program, to where, if a young man or woman comes to our school and they give us 4 or 5 years, and it's somebody that we want to give us 4 or 5 years, we need to figure out a way to not only have the NIL money, but have some version of some type of state retirement, which, they don't have to get that for 30 or 40 years. It gives them an opportunity to really settle down with a program once we get our base set up. Because it's going to come, in the end, it's all going to come down to money. This platform has already been put out there before. The NFL in particular, the worst team gets the best players. So, but in college right now, the team with the most money gets the best players. So, I mean, somehow we got to have, some type of balance, or the people with the most money are always going to win the games, unless you come up with some type of, hate to keep talking about it, but I mean, what Indiana did, I mean, that's like the perfect, I'm going to say that's probably the perfect, copycat situation you could look at right now that was totally and completely successful. They came out of nowhere. I mean, West Virginia's been known to come out of nowhere, so hopefully we can do all that. But somewhere along the way, but some way, shape, or form, we need to figure out a way to give benefits to these athletes. And I'm not just talking about football; it could be all the athletes, and that's way you can get them. If you're getting good at picking them, then you really want them to stick. You don't want them to leave. You don't want them to leave because, hey, guess what? I can go jump in the portal and I could go make 500 more grand someplace else, or whatever the number is. So, you know, this program has already been out there, but the only difference is there's 32 teams in the NFL, and you got about, there's almost 800 colleges across the land, and you got, you can break it down any way you want. There's probably 80 to 120 schools that could be potentially involved. So then what you got, you might need to break it down. 40 teams in this one, and 40 teams in another, and 40 teams in another, because, they can make it really sexy. And, every one of those teams could have some version of a draft, or every one of those conferences could have some version of a draft. And maybe there's a way we could feed off of other schools around us, just like bigger schools and bigger states could, feed around the other guys, and keep pulling them up. You pull them out of your own state before you go get them in another state. there's so many ways you can look at that. I mean, I know it's money, but I mean, there's a whole lot of money being made. So it's like, people forget that this college football business and college athletics in general, there's a whole lot of money being made. And that NIL money looks a little, I'm not going to say it looks a little, it looks a lot light. That's light for trying to recruit people. So I'm not saying you can't do it, but I think you need to have benefits for younger people, and then this way they have a chance to have an extra retirement if they're lucky. I mean, who wouldn't want that deal? If you really want somebody, and to maybe you get them to play for the future versus, hey, I want all the money right now, because you don't need all that money right now. You need that money when you get older, and when you're not so, when you're not such in good shape anymore. So I just think it would be great. And, we got lots of alumni brothers in all the athletics. They're all in different type of financial fields and so on and so forth. You got guys like Matt Ratcher, Andre Johnson, Pat Marlette, and these are just guys, they're in my time frame. I'm sure they'd love to be able to sit down and say, hey, this is what you do, this is what you don't do. It's what you get in trouble with the things that you don't, that you shouldn't do, but you learn a hard lesson if you do it, and then you get smacked with it. So these guys have been in the markets for 30 plus years, so they know how that stuff to survive downturns and recessions, etc., because we've had a couple along the way. Mm-hmm. So I just think, some way, shape, or form, it looks like the coaching staff's doing a great job getting players. So we got, looks like we got better ingredients this year. And, we just need to figure out different mechanisms to move the team forward. I mean, from one of the last things I looked at, and not trying to take away all the high scores that we're getting in the player department, but it'll be really interesting to see. One of the last things I looked at the end of the year after the Texas Tech game is where we finished up across the board, across the whole country. It was basically number 78. Okay? So somehow we got to be able to go from 78 to top 25 or higher. And this year we might be able to get in there. I'm hoping so. So, we got to we got to be number one in a lot of categories, and that's basically we're baking the cake with the ingredients, and we got to get in that top 25, top 17 or 16. It'd be great to be able to have a chance to even get in the playoffs. So, I like Rich as a coach. I think he can do it. I just think, we just need to keep elevating the players at every position so they can do it, and hopefully we just get some good guys in there. But it comes down to finance, and lots of finances it is, and hopefully along the way they want to figure out how they can spend more money instead of less money, because when you're in a numbers game like that, it looks a little bit lopsided, so to speak. So you wouldn't want to. Would you have a losing season if you knew if you added doubled it up and added some form of a retirement that benefited the team and the whole aspect of a team, and kept that player in West Virginia? I just think, NIL is just a nice word for, separated money. So we're going to give you NIL money because we don't want you to be over here in this pot of money. So, kind of crazy, but they don't mind everybody's efforts are doing what they're doing to try and help win some football games.
Yeah.
And basketball games and baseball games and, lacrosse and whatever else we do. So I just think from a economic perspective, we need to get to a point where we can have the adult conversation. How can we raise more money to have a bigger NIL/NIL retirement if people give us, 4 or 5 years of their life there. And I just think you'll retain more, and now, probably by next year and after this year, they'll probably be recruiting better. So they'll have hopefully a good rhythm on that. And, it's everything looks promising, but that's athletics. So if you're not trying, you're never going to have a chance to win. So
Mick, when Mike first started talking about this, it made a lot of sense to me. But I shouldn't say but. We all know this as we get older. Life at 20, the world looks different from when you're 50. But this concept of a deferred compensation of some type, to be able to have the money set aside for later in life, I don't know if that's something that would be appealing to players. My guess is, and I'm just speculating, I don't know, that it might be more appealing to, let's say, the parents or those who would like to see money set aside for later. It might make sense to donors to know that the money is going, as Mike said, you've invested how many years with West Virginia. There's going to be a payoff for that financially that's going to be in your future. But your thoughts about the general concept, and one of the things I think we've got to think about, is it possible for WVU to be a leader in this, to take advantage, as Mike says, of the alumni who are in finances, to put together a plan, because obviously in the Wild West, I think you've got wide parameters in terms of what you can do institutionally. What is your general thoughts, Mick, be really as a former player? Do you think this general direction would have some payoff?
I think it depends on who's influencing the decision that the young person is making. If they're making the decision themselves, quite frankly, going back to when I was 18, 19 years old, give it to me now, which is what everybody says right now. But to those whose parents are having a big influence on the decision that their son or daughter are making, I think it makes a lot of sense. I like the deferred compensation idea personally. It's almost like you're treating them like a state employee. You're coming to work for the state of West Virginia. You're going to give up
it's the
4 or
idea.
5 years of your life. Yep. Like a state employee, you're going to have not only perhaps, to take it a step further, a pot of money put away for retirement, but health benefits. If you could include health benefits in later life, along with, just a pot of money sitting there, I think that would embellish the idea a little bit. My question would be this: so West Virginia University decides to do this. What stops Texas Tech from deciding to do exactly the same thing? And now they're doing it also, but they're doing it times 10 what West Virginia is doing it. I like the idea, Mike, but to me, I think, Frank mentioned the Wild Wild West. Somebody needs to step in and put some limits. And you mentioned different divisions. The NFL has got this thing planned out pretty well. They do everything pretty well.
32 teams, easy.
There you go. You have maybe three college divisions: Division A, B, and C, 1, 2, or 3. You go back to geographic competition with teams competing against their old rivals locally. And each of those 3 divisions has a cap, just like the NFL has a salary cap. Each division would have some sort of monetary cap that they could choose to invest in their player personnel. So I think there are a number of different things. I like the concept. Don't take me wrong. I think it's a great concept.
Well, yeah, I mean, my whole thing is get the veteran players that's done all this and played, and dealt with the finances for the last 20, 30 years and actually sit down with these people and talk to them and tell them, hey, this is what it's really all about in the end, okay? Because we're at the end of the damn rainbow now. So we was at the beginning of the rainbow, but we didn't have these type of opportunities, and I'm okay with all that. That's cool. But hey, there's a chance for them to have. They can if they could if there's a way to implement some version of. There's a chance for them to get one retirement if they can do it in college, two retirements if they get a job, or three retirements if they college, NFL, and then a job. I mean,
Yep.
you need all the retirement you can get out here. You know what I'm saying? So
You said
that's how I
everything.
see it.
Yeah. No, I like the idea. I really like the idea. My only question would be, and you make a good point. It's the guys that have lived through this, that have been successful in the financial world. They're the ones that need to get involved to help sell this, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, there's nothing better, and nothing. It's boring, but there's nothing better than 30 years of compounding interest on a technical minimal amount of money to start with that will grow over time. That really gives somebody one hell of a benefit. Plus, it helps secure someone's future. That's how I see it.
Yeah, great idea. I like it.
Well, I think many donors would find extremely appealing. You think of all the donors who fund scholarships. They don't give money directly to a student, but they fund a scholarship. When you think about the idea of a deferred compensation, that money would go into a retirement account and or, as Mickey brought up, health insurance, then
Well, yeah, whatever you can get them, the more the merrier.
Exactly, and I think you get some donors that wouldn't be interested, but others perhaps would be willing to give who maybe aren't giving now or aren't giving at that level. And the other thing about this that I think is really important, and you and I have talked about this from the very beginning. Anything West Virginia University or any university can do to engage in a relevant, significant way its alumni, particularly those who have been, in this case, in the trenches, who've been there, done it, to be able to get their brain power, their commitment, because my God, it's your alma mater, I think is a winner. I mean I could see I could see some.
Yeah, it's powerful. I mean, going back to answer one of your questions, Mickey, about if Texas Tech does something, I don't really give a crap what anybody else does. You know what I'm saying? I want to be the first one to do it, and whatever they can do. They're going to do it anyways. But I'm just saying, be the first. You know what I'm saying? And make the difference. Make the bigger difference. You make the bigger difference sooner than later, and I think you're in a better spot in the end, because then, what else? Hey, if you do give them health insurance, guess what? You can give them health insurance, and then guess what? If they move into the state of West Virginia, hey, you could use all our hospital networks in the state. Then you pull back population too. I mean, this thing could go bigger and better than you think. So you go from 8 million to 2.2.
Yeah, the concept I think makes so much sense, and your point, Mick, about someone's got to get control of this, but we know that the powers that be, and the example you gave of Texas Tech, I mean, what we got is a Big Ten and an SEC. We talked about this, and now you've got Texas Tech and the Big 12 that basically know that if they invest more money, they can really influence results, which, as we know, the NFL disallows with the draft.
The best player goes to the worst team. Now that leads you to the point of, I feel bad for the guys that go to the worst team, because that team does not have the, most of the time doesn't have the real power or the know-how or whatever you want to call it, the mojo, to elevate the player. A lot of times it's a very unsuccessful mission. So then that kid who's ever was number one going to wherever, I mean, Sam Darnold is a great example that he's playing in a Super Bowl. He went from the Jets to the Panthers to a couple other places, then to the 49ers, and then he went back he was up there in Minnesota. I mean, and then all of a sudden he lands in the Seattle Seahawks. I mean, it's a good story. So, he started at the Jets. The best player went to the worst team, but then, he was fortunate enough to crawl through all those rivers of whatever you want to call that. But, did they have coaching staffs that could elevate the players? And I'm not saying nobody's trying. I'm just saying, teams that are really trying, and teams that are just kind of there. You know what I'm saying? I use the word, there are some teams that are just TV contract fulfillers, and then there are some teams that are just trying to be better. So, and I'm mostly talking about NFL, and I'm sure something similar goes with the college teams, but the college is the most, it's the teams with the most money you're going to get the best players. So,
yeah. Well, we definitely, Mike, really appreciate it, and we want to keep this conversation going and expand the circle. I could see a summit or a conference of some type with a circle of alums, with someone like a Kevin Johnston at the university, with the varsity club, talking about how do you begin to put some ideas and eventually taking the ideas to a Ren Baker. Because what's missing right now is leadership in real terms. Well, terms.
The problem is everyone, I don't know this as a fact, but nobody wants to hear about, oh my God, I got to spend more money. But I'm telling you, it'd be the best money they ever spent in any time of their history. So
yeah, absolutely.
Because if you don't if you don't do something different, you got to be the forefronter. You got to be the person that climbs the mountain. We are mountaineers, by the way, so we're used to doing things, up and out of the ordinary way. But if you don't do it first, you're not going to make yourself special, number one. And number two, you could keep your NIL money as low as possible. And, you may not get the best players. You might get players that you can coach, but we really need to look at the Signetti plan over there at Indiana. Not that I'm a big copycat guy, but I mean that somehow they did it. But I bet they didn't do it on $700,000. So
that's right. That's right.
That's a total.
Well, great. Yep, Mike. Thank you so much, Mickey. Your final thoughts, and then we'll wrap up tonight and bid everyone adieu.
Hey, this was a great discussion tonight, Mike. Thanks so much for joining us. Really appreciate your input here, and hopefully we can get you back with some of the other persons that you mentioned there, and continue this discussion down the road. I did get an email from Kevin today, and the varsity club weekend is going to be UT Martin, University of Tennessee Martin, the second game of the year. I think it's September the 12th or the 13th. So, Mike, hope you make it up for that, and we'll get some old Mountaineers up there together.
Well, and that would be a good weekend to discuss something like this. So we're going to continue this, those who are watching. And the thing about it, when you talk about credibility, here's Mike Fox, who is in the WVU Sports Hall of Fame, played a decade in the NFL, won a championship with the New York Giants, long-term with the Carolina Panthers. And so you got a lot of credibility. And, we have a lot of, I would say, big guns as WVU alums that if they get behind something like this, have the credibility, the smarts, and the passion to make something happen. So it's great. By the way, there's another person who's very happy with tonight, not necessarily about the show because he's not here, but Winthrop is ahead of Radford with 18 minutes left, 46-39. So we hope that Greg and the family are enjoying that game. I'm sure they are, and that Winthrop will hold on No negative about any Radford alum that might be uh, listening or watching tonight, but Craig is there at Radford, Virginia, enjoying himself. He'll be back next week. If you could put up the announcement for next week, we'll round third using a baseball analogy and head for home. We're going to continue this in a little bit different way. There's no one better in the country who does the analytics than for years. Tony had a company, Altamore Collins. That's how I first got to know Tony, because I would use his data and research in my writing about sports. And Tony is nationally acclaimed, has worked with a variety of universities and other firms interested in college sports. He's out in California, and he's been with us twice. This is his third visit. He's going to be with us next Wednesday night at 7 o'clock. Tony Altamore will be talking about where are we in college football and where does he think it's going to go. And if you've ever seen him on our show or know anything about Tony, and we encourage you to follow him on X at TJ Altamore. He is blunt. He gives it to you straight. And I always ask him, how is WVU doing in the Big 12 landscape and in the broader landscape, not just in terms of money and wins and losses, but in terms of how it's perceived, what the prospects for in terms of moving up sort of the ladder in college sports. And he's always just great. So we look forward to have Tony with us next Wednesday night. I agree, Mick. Thanks so much, Mike, for taking the time to be with us. Mick, always great working with you, great contribution. And again, we'll see Greg next week with us. And so for all of you, and with Darren and our good friend Mark Parsons, who does such a great job lining up guests for us, we appreciate everybody watching tonight. We enjoyed the show. Hope you did too. And we look forward to being with you next Wednesday night with Tony Altamore. Take care, everyone.